Can sports be diverse? It's a question that people have asked for a very long time, and maybe now more so than ever before. The answer is kind of complicated, because on a surface level, you look around all major sports leagues, there's more people of color in there now than there ever have been. Look at a game of basketball from today versus a game from the 70s, and you can see there are definitely more people of color, more representation for diverse crowds in sports now than there ever used to be. So at a quick glance, you might say, well, of course they can be diverse, because they already are. But I would argue that's not the case, because athletes that are people of color are not treated the same as their white counterparts. There are many examples I can say of this, but one of the most popular is Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick was the quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers, took them to the Super Bowl, lost, but barely. Then the next season followed that up with a championship game appearance, but they lost that as well. And then the team kind of fell apart, and everything kind of spiraled downhill from there. And then one preseason, Colin Kaepernick decided to take a knee during the national anthem, and he said it was to protest how the song and the flag for people of color cannot represent what it's supposed to. Rather, it represents oppression and hatred, and how people of color might not want to glorify a symbol that to them doesn't represent the same as it does to the average white person. Now, many people did not like this. They said it was against America. They said it was disrespectful to the military. And among those people was this guy.
I'd love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a bitch off the field right now. He's fired. He's fired!
So what Kaepernick did was not the most popular thing, and at the end of that season, the 49ers decided to cut him and move on. Kaepernick hasn't even gotten a job opportunity since then. And while the popular argument for most people is saying, well, Kaepernick wasn't that good when he was in San Francisco, at least at the end, so why would he get another job? He wasn't a good quarterback. And while his stats his last two seasons were subpar at best, however, that argument doesn't always work. You look around the NFL and at backup quarterbacks specifically, and you find people like Chad Henne and Blake Bortles and Nathan Peterman and Chase Daniel, who all have jobs and whose stats are not that much better than Colin Kaepernick's, and in many respects are worse than Kaepernick ever was. They never have enjoyed the success that he did. Now, Blake Bortles did take his team to the championship game, but it wasn't really him that took them there. He kind of rode a very good defense and a good running game. And ultimately they lost and they didn't get to the Super Bowl because Bortles couldn't get them over the hump, and they decided to get rid of him. But all of those quarterbacks that I've mentioned still have jobs in the NFL. So why wouldn't Kaepernick? He had success before. Now, Kaepernick isn't the only example of something like this happening. Obviously, when George Floyd was murdered last summer, then there was a lot of Black Lives Matter protests everywhere, that a lot of them involved popular sports figures such as LeBron James or Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson, and all of them had things to say on the subject, and very, heavy issues that the murder of George Floyd kind of embodies. And rather than a lot of fans seeing this, they just went to the popular argument of don't make sports political. A lot of conservative white men were saying this the most, and more specifically, and much more importantly, rich white conservative men that often run a lot of these sports leagues. Whether that's as a commissioner or as an owner of a specific team, a lot of them are conservative, and a lot of them are very rich, and they have lots of money to throw away a problem. Except this time, it didn't quite work, because people were so fed up that they kept pushing the message of police brutality, of the issues that arise when police have unchecked power, and how they're often trained to fire first and ask questions later, specifically on people of color. When everyone says don't politicize it, that argument also doesn't work as well as people think, because when you find somebody like popular quarterback Drew Brees, who comes out against kneeling for the flag, saying that it's disrespectful to the military and how you should be grateful for the freedoms that you have in this country, they suddenly don't care that they're politicizing it. Or how NASCAR drivers have come out and straight up said that they should have the Confederate flag at NASCAR races because it's part of their history, and you can't erase history. And all of a sudden, when people make arguments like those, the people that say don't politicize sports don't care. There's no message of don't politicize sports then, because it's not about politicizing sports. It's more about saying what they believe. If you're in lockstep, if you agree with everything that conservatives say, they don't much care whether sports are politicized. They only care when it's the liberal agenda that's being pushed. Then you get the issue of somebody like Laurel Hubbard, a transgender woman who is lifting weights in the Olympics this year. Conservatives have an issue with this because, well, it's unfair to women's sports because, well, he's a man. At least that's what they say. Now, I do think there is some nuanced debate that can be had here, where, yeah, it might be a little unfair if the transgender person in question has only started being on hormones for 2-3 months, and they still have a lot of testosterone in their body. There can be a hormonal advantage to that. Now, how much of one, I'm not quite sure exactly. I'm not a scientist. I don't feel qualified speaking on that. But there are many studies that say that while there is an advantage when you first start transitioning into being your preferred gender, after a certain point, after you've been on hormones for, I forget, like a year, maybe a little bit longer, or whether, you stop, even if you don't go on, like estrogen or whatever, and you just stop the testosterone from entering your body, then your competitive advantage, as people say, kind of disappears. It's no longer, well, this person used to be a man, so hence they're stronger than what the average woman would be. That's not true anymore. So while there is a nuanced debate in terms of how long should there, be a gap between when you're allowed to participate in a sport that's gendered, that you identify as the other gender, I don't know how much it really matters, and even if you say it does, in this person's case in particular, it wouldn't matter anyway, because they've been transitioning for a while. And other people say, well, if they want to play sports so much, why don't they start their own leagues? Can you imagine how limited of a talent pool that would be? You have to think, how many people would, one, even participate in that, and two, how many would watch it? Because even something like the WNBA doesn't get a lot of viewership, and that's just women's basketball. How many people would go out to specifically watch a transgendered basketball team or whatever? It wouldn't be very many people, so hence it wouldn't be profitable for any organization to really take that on, so it wouldn't really be a league per se. It would more be like pickup games. And while that's fine, I don't think that's fair. Why punish a transgender person for not being able to participate in a sport just because they're transgender? They didn't choose to be. And if you don't agree with that statement, well, then you have a whole other set of issues to talk about, and I don't want to get into that in this video because it's already too long. Speaking of people not being able to change stuff about themselves, you get the whole other issue in sports about LGBT people, and not just the trans people, but just gay or lesbian people. How often are they truly represented in sports? Not very often. Carl Nabib, I believe is how you say his name, I may be saying it wrong, a defensive end for the Las Vegas Raiders, has recently come out as gay. It's the first openly gay person in the NFL. And that's kind of not true. Michael Sam was a defensive end that was drafted by the St. Louis Rams, and possibly Los Angeles. I can't really remember when he was drafted. I think it was St. Louis. But he never really made the team. He wasn't quite good enough. However, only one? It seems a little low, percentage-wise. And then you always get the people that, after somebody comes out as gay, say one of two things. One, nobody cares, why are you telling me, I don't need to know your sexuality? Or two, it's another politicized thing again. Don't politicize sports. Keep it in the closet. I don't need to know. It's essentially the same argument, but just slightly tweaked because they don't have lots of arguments really against it. They just don't like the idea of it. There's also a report recently that one of the Buffalo Bills members from the teams that went to 4 straight Super Bowls in the 90s, one of their players was gay. But it wasn't known at the time because it wasn't okay to talk about, really. It wasn't something where you come out with that information. They were in the closet, although the people in the organization knew, but the public didn't. So circling back to the question of the video, can sports be diverse? The answer in and of itself should be yes. There's no reason why they can't. People of color obviously deserve to play. People of different sexualities deserve to play. People of different gender and gender identities deserve to play. There's no reason why any of these groups of people should be excluded or treated any differently from things that they can't control, especially when it comes to something that should be as simple as just playing a sport. However, it's not the sport itself that can't be diverse. Rather, the people that run the sport really have that power to control how diverse a sport is. And unfortunately, many of those people that have run the organizations or leagues in general have to be rich. And unfortunately, most of them are white. So when you have lots of rich and white people, historically, they often don't appreciate minorities and don't really let them enjoy things. That makes sense. We still need to get past the step of treating people differently. Saying don't politicize sports is stupid, because sports have always been politicized. Because it's something in the world, and everything in the world can be politicized, and often is. Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you guys liked this format. It's something that I don't normally do, and I hope that, you know, my messages came across the way I wanted them to. And I'm not saying that, you know, every white person thinks, you know, they should politicize sports or whatever, because I would be in some trouble. But rather, it's just people who, you know, conservatives, and not even every conservative, but that's the biggest group that kind of think this way. And I think if you can get some people to turn around on this, then it might really help the community of, you know, of sports and everything like that, to just the world in general, to become more diverse. Hopefully you guys enjoy this video and enjoy my content. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next episode. Goodbye!